Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the comprehensive yet informal study of Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, the masterwork of modern philosophy that basically kicked off German idealism, which I was just talking to Patrick, who was here with me to accompany me in this study, this session, and there's a whole lot of stuff in German idealism, and I really want to read it, but to do it, I have to get through basic works, and this is one of them. So if you're also interested in that, we're happy for you to join us. We are currently in the transcendental logic and the transcendental deduction of the pure categories of thought, I think is the title of this part that we're in. As you can see here, there are many parts and divisions and books and chapters. So I think that's roughly the title. We're in the B edition. And we're on section 24 on the application of the categories to objects of the senses in general. Overall, lately we've been talking about apperception and the process of attaching categories to objects, some of the kind of details that precede that process, and it looks like now we're going to get it in a more direct and perhaps even general sense. So, yeah, that's kind of a brief introduction to where we're at. If none of that makes any sense to you, then please go back and watch. You should definitely like watch this in sequential order. So go back if you've missed anything. Currently, at time of recording, I'm behind on uploading. So I'm the studies. So I'm gonna get to that and definitely watch all of the ones before this one. Those are my preliminary remarks. Do you have any, Patrick?
Yeah, specifically with apperception, let's keep in mind the synthetic unity of apperception and this
Yeah.
idea that how do we attain this synthetic a priori, cognition? Well, part of it has to do with the fact that in order to have any kind of experience, we already have to have apperception, but this apperception is already a synthesis, right? It's the synthesis of all these, different intuitions, different aspects of sensation, of pure intuition that are taken together and described as one conscious experience. Well, putting all that together is already a synthesis a priori. So all it comes down to is probably, breaking down that synthesis into more specific aspects.
Yep. Cool.
So, yeah, with that, I guess I'll get started.
Yeah.
The pure concepts of the understanding are related through the mere understanding to objects of intuition in general, without it being determined whether this intuition is our own or some other, but still sensible one. But they are on this account mere forms of thought, through which no determinate object is yet cognized. The synthesis or combination of the manifold in them was merely related merely to this unity of apperception, and was thereby the ground of possibility of cognition a priori, insofar as it rests on the understanding, and was therefore not only transcendental, but also merely purely intellectual. But since in us a certain form of sensible intuition a priori is fundamental, which rests on the receptivity of the capacity for representation, sensibility, the understanding as spontaneity can determine the manifold of given representations in accord with the synthetic unity of apperception, and thus think synthetic a priori synthetic unity of the apperception of the manifold of sensible intuition as the condition under which all objects of human intuition must necessarily stand, through which then the categories as mere forms of thought acquire objective reality, i.e., application of two objects that can be given to us in intuition, but only as appearances, for of these alone we are capable of intuition a priori. It almost feels like he should like end the critique there. Doesn't it?
Why do you say
Well,
that?
no, but like it's the big reveal, isn't it? It's how is it possible
Oh,
that
well, yeah. Maybe he should end the
I mean,
transcendental logic here. Yeah.
well, no, he shouldn't really end any of it, but in a sense, he has answered the question, right?
Yep.
The question we sought out, just in the most general terms, he has answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that synthetic a priori cognitions are possible? And
Mm-hmm.
really, he specified earlier what is the question more specifically, how is synthetic a priori cognition applicable objectively, right, to things that we actually experience outside of ourselves? I get how we could do it subjectively, but how do we have this notion of cause and then apply it actually to objects in reality? Well, the answer is that reality is already synthesized by us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reality is already something we had to put together, namely as our experience, right? Reality for Kant, of course, is we're just talking about the reality of phenomenon, appearance. And appearance requires someone for whom it is to appear, not in the substantial sense, but in the sense previously talked about. This unity of our perception, this unity of it being one single experience. Well, everything is already unified. It's already synthesized into one experience, and therefore, um, it really, I think, comes down to taking apart that synthesis that has already occurred and then subdividing it. So really, the synthesis, that synthetic a priori cognition, is in a sense an analysis of synthesis that has already taken place, namely the synthesis of perception, is what he seems to be saying. Would you agree with that?
I think so.
Yeah. So synthetic a priori um, actually seems to be analytic in a sense,
Yeah.
in the sense of analyzing something we have already synthesized. So the only real synthesis takes place in our perception, and everything else is an analysis of that. Maybe.
Yes, I think that's correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he would have spelled it out or said it that way, but I think that might be implied by what he's saying.
Just conceptual. I think yeah, that's what's going on. Cool.
But it's
Uh,
still in the broader sense synthetic, since it does require that synthesis to have already
in
happened.
the first place, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, it looks like he talks about that more in the
Actually,
next
I
one.
have one more thing to say.
Oh,
That might be one of the reasons why people aren't sold on the analytic synthetic divide.
yeah, including Hegel. I think.
Right?
I think he
Because
makes a similar.
if you've already synthesized everything together,
Mhm.
then the things
Really, there's
here
nothing
is
new.
calling
Yeah.
analytic, right? It's just an analysis,
Yep.
right?
Of the already existing,
Of the
already
already existing.
synthesized things. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So that might account for the reason why people are inclined to disagree with the analytic synthetic divide.
But I think it makes sense, like given that a synthesis has to happen in the first place. So I think he's on to something there.
Well, maybe, but it actually would imply that everything is synthetic, wouldn't it? Because if I'm to analyze some kind of statement, right? In order for that statement to have any even form, it has to already stand under the synthesis of perception. No.
Yeah, it does.
So in that case, can we really divide analytic from synthetic?
No, not in this system anyway. I guess.
Well,
Um,
I think we need to keep going because I don't think he's totally spelled out
no, yeah,
that
definitely not.
the categories are an analysis of this synthesis.
Yeah, let's see what he says
And
specifically.
I'm not sure whether he would agree with that, but it does seem to follow from what he said.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's keep going. The synthesis of the manifold of sensible intuition, which is possible and necessary a priori, can be called figurative, as distinct from that which would be thought in the mere category in regard to the manifold of an intuition in general, and which is called combination of the understanding. Both are transcendental, not merely because they themselves precede a priori, but also because they ground the possibility of other cognition a priori.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see.
So synthesis precedes
Synthesis
a
of the
priori.
manifold. So I'm gonna read this slower. The
Hmm.
synthesis of the manifold of sensible intuition. Okay, which is possible and necessary a priori, is called
Figurative.
figurative, as distinct from that which would be thought. Meaning what? The synthesis of the manifold
In the,
that is not in the mere category. What is that? What is the pronoun referring to?
That which would be thought in mere. Oh,
Synthesis?
no,
Synthesis of the manifold?
it's in referring to combination of the understanding, I think.
Okay. Is distinct from that which would be thought in the mere category in regard to the manifold. No, because he's giving a definition of combination of the understanding.
Yeah, and which is called combination. So from
But
that,
that, but the word that, if you're giving a definition, then the pronoun can't, it would be a cyclical definition.
basically, I'm reading it as like that which is called combination of the understanding, and then like this stuff just adds detail. But what he's
But
talking,
you can't, if you're giving a definition, you can't include the phrase in the definition because then you wouldn't explain it. I think he's talking about the synthesis of the manifold when he says that. Okay, let's finish the sentence. That which would be thought in mere category in regard to the manifold of an intuition in general. What the synthesis of the manifold thought in a mere category? What does that mean?
I don't know.
What does it mean to be thought in the mere category in regard to the manifold of an intuition in general?
That sentence does not, or that phrase does not make a lot of sense to me.
Thought in the mere okay, in regard to the manifold of an intuition in general, as opposed to sensible intuition.
Hang on, I'm gonna get the other translation I have of this book and see if I'm gonna go to B151 and see if I can make some sense out of this.
This is pretty crazy. It seems like he's drawing a distinction between sensible intuition and something else that happens in the understanding, but I don't. It's some kind of synthesis because he's using the word synthesis.
Oh, here we go. All right, so this is the Penguin Classics edition, and it's the synthesis of the manifold of sensible intuition, which is the possibility, or the synthesis of the manifold of sensible intuition, which is possible and necessary a priori, may be called figurative synthesis, in order to distinguish it from that which is thought in the mere category with regard to the manifold of an intuition in general, which is called combination of the understanding.
That doesn't help.
Yeah, that doesn't help at all. It uses the same. Well, it adds in regard to, or with regard to, which would be thought with regard to the mere, with regard to the manifold.
So he's talking about the synthesis of sensible intuition versus the synthesis of a manifold of intuition in general. But what kind of intuition? There isn't any kind of intuition except sensible. We've already talked about this. Right?
Yeah.
Remember earlier where he said like
with that weird parentheses.
Yeah. But like it's clearly not a fluke because he's bringing it up again, but he already defined sensibility as. So let's assume again that he's using it empirically and see if that makes it make more sense. So the synthesis of a manifold of empirical intuition, right? To try to correct him if he's making a mistake, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Which is possible and necessary a priori, can be called figurative, as distinct from that which would be thought in the mere category in regard to the manifold of intuition in general. So intuition in general would be any sensible intuition, because he already said at the outset, sensibility is the faculty for intuition.
This is this is Kant 101 right here. Yeah.
So he's
So
definitely contradicting himself in asserting some kind of intuition other than sensible. I am not being ungenerous here. This is a self-contradiction.
mm,
I had to say that out loud to make sense, because I'm trying to be generous in my
yeah.
interpretation of Kant, but you can't.
Okay, so figurative synthesis is that of empirical intuitions, and and um and
Intellectual,
combination
right? Well,
the
intellectual
understanding
combination of the understanding is that of intuition in
in
general.
general. Okay.
So, which is to say, any sensible intuition.
Yeah. I should
Both are
really.
transcend.
I did not email Doctor Lee about that one problem we had because I figured it was. I kind of forgot, but it's coming up again. So I want to see what he says just to see if we're correct and if he knows anything about it, if he even respond to me. But
Both are transcendental, not merely because they themselves proceed a priori, but also because they ground the possibility of other cognition a priori. But that doesn't make sense, right? Because figurative synthesis is supposed to be empirical synthesis. So how can it be empirical and a priori?
well,
We would, we would have to go back and assume that it's not empirical intuition, but actually sensible intuition. But if that were the case, then there is no other kind of intuition.
yeah, this is a weird paragraph. Um,
And look, so where it's going, it says, yet
yet
the
the figure,
figurative
yeah.
synthesis, it pertains merely to the original synthetic unity of apperception, i.e., this transcendental unity, which is thought in the categories, must be called, as distinct from merely intellectual combination, transcendental synthesis of the imagination. Imagination is the faculty for representing an object even without its presence in intuition. So this is a problem, right?
Hmm.
Because I mean, he has defined imagination as something other than synthesis,
Mm-hmm.
right? In apperception, right? And now he's saying, well, that is um, figurative synthesis pertaining merely to the synthetic unity of apperception, which I guess implies in being transcendental that it isn't empirical. But then there's no distinction between it and intuition in general,
Hmm.
because the only kind of intuition is sensible intuition.
Hmm.
So it seems to rest, like the imagination distinction seems to rest on this distinction between figurative
Right,
synthesis and
because yeah.
combination of the understanding, but there's no distinction being made. Either that or he's not being consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is really weird.
So it seems like we're stuck in a fork between, we can either say everything is Kant is saying here is self-contradictory, or we can say he's made a distinction with no difference.
Fake distinction. Um, I guess we'll just keep reading. I don't know. I can't think of a way out of this right now.
All right,
Um,
I'm going to keep reading. Yet the figurative synthesis, if it pertains merely to the original synthetic unity of apperception, i.e., this transcendental unity, which is thought in the categories, must be called, as distinct from merely intellectual combination, the transcendental synthesis of the imagination. Imagination, he used big type and spacing for extra emphasis.
yes.
Imagination.
Spongy's literally
SpongeBob
SpongeBob.
Rainbow. Yeah, that. Imagination is the faculty for representing an object even without its presence in intuition. Okay, well that definition like makes sense, but also doesn't make sense according to what he's already said.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue. Now, since all of our intuition is sensible, what the hell, dude? The imagination, on account of the subjective condition under which it alone can give corresponding intuition to the concepts of the understanding, belongs to sensibility. But insofar as synthesis is an exercise of spontaneity, which is determining and not, in a sense, merely determinable, and thus can determine what?
What the fuck?
Hold on. Okay, back up to the beginning of the sentence, which is on the last page, and I'm going to go slow. Now, since all of our intuition is sensible, the imagination, on account of the subjective condition under which it alone can give a corresponding intuition to the concepts of understanding, belongs to sensibility, but insofar as its synthesis is still an exercise of spontaneity, which is determining and not, like sense, merely determinable, it can thus determine the form of sense a priori in accordance with the unity of apperception. The imagination is to this extent a faculty for determining the sensibility a priori,
What?
and its synthesis of intuitions in accordance with the categories must be the transcendental synthesis of the imagination, which is an effect of the understanding on sensibility in its first application, and at the same time the ground of all others to the objects of intuition that is possible, that should be R, possible for us. That's a grammatical error
No, it
on the
isn't.
translator.
It's first
Two
application.
objects. What?
I think
Okay.
this is the subject, right?
Is it? Which to the effect of the understanding of sensibility and its first application.
Or no, I guess this is the subject. The effect of the understanding. And its first
I
application.
lost track of where this sentence is going a long time ago. Um, so okay. How? All right, let's go back. Again. Um, Now, since all our intuition is sensible, okay,
So
that's true.
this part makes sense to me. I think he's just saying that um, imagination belongs to
Yeah, the middle part
sensibility.
makes sense, but I lost him at the end.
Yeah. So where I got lost is uh, imagine. Yeah, this is where I got lost. The imagination is to this extent a faculty for determining the sensibility a priori. Oh wait, unless he's just saying.
No, I got that.
Okay, never mind. I just understood that when I reread it. Okay.
And its synthesis of intuitions. Well, I think we could actually have a period here, right? Let's insert a period and take out the and say its synthesis of intuitions in accordance with the categories must be the transcendental synthesis of the imagination. Why would he say that?
It's synthesis of intuitions.
What he said is the imagination must be the transcendental synthesis of the imagination. That's what he said.
Yeah. He said the synthesis of the imagination must be the transcendental synthesis of the imagination.
Yeah, take out the its, and it says, take out the its and take out the dependent clause in accordance with the categories, right? Because those two, just clarify the statement. The basic statement is the transcendental synthesis, the imagine, the synthesis of the imagination of intuitions must be the transcendental synthesis of the imagination. Like the statement is basically just A equals A. Anyway,
No, I think it's
moving.
saying. I think the point of it is that it's transcendental, which is obviously very obvious. But
Well, then why wouldn't he just say it's transcendental, which he already did?
yeah, I was gonna say, didn't he say that the
Yeah,
both are
he did. All right, moving up. Okay. Uh, which is an effect of the understanding on sensibility and its first application, which is an effect of the understanding on sensibility and its first application. Okay, makes sense. And at the same time, the ground of all others to objects of intuition that is possible for. He was just saying it was transcendental. That's it. The
Yeah, I
whole
thought that's
thing
what he was
is
saying.
him
Yeah.
just repeating that it's transcendental.
Uh,
Um. Okay. So
I should have pulled up the broad
doubling
button.
back, he has not forgotten that all intuition is sensible. But now, if he hasn't forgotten that all intuition is sensible, why is he distinguishing between sensible intuition and intuition in general?
Yeah, is there a weird third sort of intuition that you're hiding from us, Kant?
Well, there is, actually. because he says for God, intuition isn't sensible. Of course, that doesn't make sense with the definitions he's given.
Yeah.
But he said, I think the idea is that God has intellectual intuition. I think that's the only interpretation I can parse out of this.
Okay.
So if we go back, right, synthesis of the manifold, which is possible and necessary a priori, would be called figurative. Synthesis speciosa, as distinct, which would be thought in the mirrored category in regard to the manifold of an intuition in general, i.e., an intuition without respect to whether it's sensible or not, and which is called combination of the understanding. Of course, that doesn't seem like a good name, because didn't he already say that if God exists, God doesn't have understanding because God isn't discursive?
Did he say that
I
earlier?
I think so.
Or does that come later? Because I don't think he said that yet.
But no, they can't be, because he said that both are transcendental. And transcendental means part of the ground of our experience.
Yes. So what the hell is he
So
talking about? What is this difference here?
I don't know. I don't know.
Email Dr. Lee about B151 and CPR. What the fuck is Kant talking about?
Hold on. Wait.
Sorry.
Go back. I think I understand.
Oh?
Finally.
Okay.
I actually think I understand now.
Okay.
He's saying the synthesis of the manifold of sensibility, which is necessary a priori, meaning various forms of synthesis. Because see how he talks about later, imagination is the faculty for representing an object even without its presence in intuition.
Yeah.
So, for instance, a synthesis such as the synthesis of a square is called figurative. And then if you look at the Latin, he says synthesis speciosa, species, specificity, specific kinds of synthesis.
Oh, okay. So it all lies
As
in the Latin
opposed
then.
to, right, yes, as opposed to that which is thought in the mere category in regard to the manifold of intuition in general, which is called the combination of the understanding.
So
So
this is the
one
general.
is,
So this is general, this is specific.
yes, I think so. So I
Okay.
think he's talking about the capacity for making specific types of specific syntheses under the conditions of sensible intuition, as opposed to the general synthesis of intuition. So one
Okay.
is like pure. So synthesis intellectualis, I think, is apperception, whereas synthesis speciosa, I think, is the imagination. And in the imagination, he actually means like what you would normally mean by imagination.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
the faculty for representing an object without its presence and intuition.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
pretty
how do we
straightforward.
arrive? Yeah. So the idea is then how do we arrive at the general like what is the general condition for the objectivity? It is the synthesis intellectualis. But how do we arrive at specific propositions a priori through synthesis speciosa?
Hmm. Yep, that checks
That's
out to
what I
me.
think.
That makes sense. That covers all the bases, I think.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So,
Get that soundboard up for something.
yeah. What was the
I
website
don't know
called?
what, but I don't know. You're the one who had it.
I know, I don't
Oh,
remember it.
holy shit, bro.
I think this was it. I hope. Yeah, this was it. Oh yeah, favorites.
Bruh.
Yeah, I don't know
Oh my
what,
God.
but I need something. I just wow. Okay.
Bruh.
I guess let's finish the paragraph.
Oh yeah, we
As
didn't do that
figured,
yet. Shit.
yeah, no. As figurative, it is distinct from the intellectual synthesis without any imagination, merely through the understanding.
Wait, where are we?
Oh, okay. In this the sentence as figurative. So,
Oh, I see. Okay.
yep. As figurative, it is distinct from the intellectual synthesis without any imagination, merely through the understanding. Oh, okay. So everything I said was wrong.
Wait, as figurative, it is distinct from the intellectual without any imagination. Huh? Wait, what does
Yeah,
that mean?
I understand what it means, I think, and it's shockingly simple.
What is it?
It's whether you imagine it or not.
As figurative, it is distinct from the intellectual system without imagination.
What's 400 plus 83?
483?
Did you imagine anything?
Yeah.
What'd you imagine?
The like arithmetic setup where you have like the bigger piece and then the plus on the left hand side and then the 38 on the bottom and then the line and then you have the not the product, you have like the result of the addition underneath the line.
Interesting. But did you need to actually visualize? Okay, let me do it again. If I have
I get it. You
400
don't need to actually
yes,
visualize 438 like individual things.
yes, exactly. That's
Okay.
all he's saying. Which, oh my God,
Wait.
literally all he's saying here. Right? The intellectual synthesis is merely through the understanding. It does not require the aid.
Oh. I
What
get
he's
it.
saying is the most
Bruh.
incredibly basic thing.
Oh,
It's ridiculous.
I get it. Yeah. Uh,
He's just literally saying like, um, you can imagine it or not.
that's what. Yeah. Right.
Man,
That accounts for this whole thing, right? Too.
uh-huh,
Yeah. Oh God.
uh-huh.
Is this really just a result of like not having like this can't just be because it's German, right? This has to be his own like doing.
Yeah, no, it's his fault. It's definitely his fault. The Germans said, "What the hell is this? I can't read this." Too.
That's true.
Um,
Um, until they read it
it's
backwards.
definitely
Yeah.
his bad.
Uh,
He said, that's why you read it backwards, right?
yeah.
That's why you read, because if I just read as figurative, it is distinct from the
Yeah, if you read
intellectual.
that first, you would have gotten. Oh my
You're
God.
like, oh, easy.
Yeah.
Oh
All
man,
right. Continuing on, I guess.
read, play Led Zeppelin backwards, get satanic messages. Play Kant backwards, get
Get comprehensible fucking philosophy.
comprehensible fucking philosophy. Yep. Can we just switch? Why don't we just like actually do this? Like read every sentence backwards.
We could do a reverse comprehensive study of a critique of
The
pure
reverse comprehensive study of the critique of pure reason. All right, no, let's continue. Now, insofar as imagination is spontaneity, I also occasionally call it proactive imagination,
productive.
and thereby distinguish it from reproductive imagination, whose synthesis is subject solely to empirical laws, namely those of association, and that therefore contributes nothing to the explanation of cognition a priori, and on that account belongs in not in transcendental philosophy, but in psychology. I think he's talking about stuff like dreams there, for instance. Imagination that um,
Hallucination is
uh,
solely subjective.
recreates unconsciously. Um, I think so. Because I guess
Um.
dreams don't, like, for instance, a dream, I think a dream would be an example of this anyway. Because a dream doesn't come to us with any.
Oh, right. Because it's not subject to empirical laws.
Right, well, it's subject solely to empirical laws, but meaning it doesn't follow the categories of the understanding. But more
Right.
importantly, it's not the act of our active synthesis, it sort of happens to us. So it belongs to the laws of association.
There
I think that's what he's talking about.
contributes nothing explanation of possibility cognition. Oh, right. Because it's not. Because we don't use the a priori synthesis for dreams. They're just
Right.
associative.
They,
Okay.
yeah. I think a dream would be an example of this.
Yeah, that's true. I guess he's being more general in that sense. They have like
Well, yeah.
hallucinations or something. I don't know.
Well, even just something, an image that occurs to us involuntarily, it seems.
Yeah, just that reproduces a reproductive image.
Right.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense to me.
All right.
I'll read
Pick
the.
this up.
Yeah. I don't know why this is here, but okay. Here is now the place to make intelligible the paradox that must have struck everyone in the exposition of the form of inner sense, which was in section 6. Namely, how this presents even ourselves to consciousness only as we appear to ourselves, not as we are in ourselves, since we intuit ourselves only as we are internally affected, which seems to be contradictory, since we would have to relate to ourselves passively. For this reason, it is customary in the systems of psychology to treat inner sense as the same faculty of apperception, which we carefully distinguish. Um,
Uh, okay.
so he's
So,
talking about how we view ourselves, which is interesting. Um,
um, so did we catch up on this apparent paradox in the form of inner sense in
n-
6?
no, not
Name,
really. We thought it made
namely,
actually quite a lot of sense, I think.
namely how this presents even ourselves to consciousness, even as we appear to ourselves, not only as we are in ourselves, since we intuit ourselves only as we're internally effective, which seems to be contradictory. Why? Since it would have to
Yeah.
relate ourselves passively, since we would have to relate to ourselves passively, what's the problem with that? For
Uh,
this reason, what's the problem with relating to ourselves passively?
because as I think, because I think the sub isn't the subject always active in the only passive thing is supposed to be the non-subject stuff like intuition, but subjective activity I think is always active in Kant, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but
Uh, Inner sense presents itself to consciousness. The form of inner sense is time, right? So the
yeah.
exposition of the form of inner sense, we're talking about time,
Mm-hmm.
namely how this presents even ourselves to consciousness. What is this? Time? Time presents itself to consciousness only as it appears to ourselves, not as we are in ourselves. Since we intuit ourselves only as we are internally affected. It
I'm
seems to
gonna I'm
be.
gonna I'm gonna go back to section 6.
Does this paradox make sense to you?
Uh, Only in the way that I could explain earlier, in that like that maybe by definition it's not like it can be passive, but it also is passive at the same time. But
But in what sense are we internally? In what sense are we passive? As far as we intuit ourselves, as far as being internally affected.
he
Well,
just
that's
says we
only a
would have to
paradox if
relate
we
to
say
ourselves
that.
passively, and I don't really know
But
what
that's
that
only a
means.
paradox if you already assert that the subject is always active. But
Right, which I
how can
think
the
he
subject
did.
always? Did he? Because he said that
He
like we
said
are.
the mind is spontaneous unless the mind and the self aren't like.
Well, yeah, the mind isn't the self. I mean, he already said that, right? There's the faculty of intuition and sensibility, and the faculty of sensibility is
Oh, right, passive. Yeah.
passive. So is that not us? It says that inner sense,
Oh
right,
well, he
presents
even he even
itself.
made this clear, right? If even it was probably after section 6. It was in this section 20 something where he was, or 19, or in the tens or the 20s, where he was talking about like the empirical self versus the transcendental self. So I figured that was already. So
Okay,
yeah,
so the inner sense is part of sensibility, and the faculty of sensibility he's already said is passively. So what happens is the faculty of sensibility, relates to itself passively, namely through the inner sense of time, right?
mhm.
It experiences how it is internally affected. And then the understanding has to actively um, make that conscious. So For this reason, it is customary in the systems of psychology to treat inner sense as the same as the faculty of apperception. Oh, okay. I guess he just assumed that we were confused by the distinction.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't confused by the distinction.
I wasn't either. Why is he
Okay,
assuming
well,
people are going to get confused?
by
By
the
that
one
of
thing,
all things, like,
oh yeah, exactly.
oh, yeah, no, you're right. Okay, you're right. So he is talking about time here. I just wanted to make sure Section 6 was referring. Yeah.
Inner
Section.
sense is time.
Yeah, yeah. Section 6 is talking about time.
Form of inner sense is time.
Yep.
So
Okay.
why would I assume that time is the same as apperception? Just because like one is like because apperception is I think therefore I am, sort of, and yeah, I guess there is an internal, but it's not a sense. Apperception isn't a sense. It's an understanding. He
Yeah,
already.
it's a combination.
I don't. I think he's just like has a bad sense of priorities here, again. Probably. All right. Well, let's continue. That which determines the inner sense is the understanding, and its original faculty of combining the manifold of intuition, i.e., of bringing it under apperception, as that on which its very possibility rests. So, not that which creates the inner sense, but that which determines it, i.e., makes it into discrete things, measures time, for instance. Now, as in us humans, the understanding is not itself a faculty of intuitions, and even if these were given in sensibility, uh, cannot take them up into itself. Huh. Okay. Now, since in us humans the understanding is not itself a faculty of intuitions, and even if these were given in sensibility, cannot take them up into itself.
What does that mean?
I don't know. In order, as it were, to combine the manifold of its own intuition, thus its synthesis, considered in itself alone, is nothing other than the unity of action of which it is conscious as such, even without sensibility, but through which it is capable of itself determining sensibility internally with regard to the manifold that may be given to it in accordance with the form of its intuition.
What the
I'll
fuck?
just finish the paragraph for the time being.
Yeah.
Under the designation of the transcendental synthesis of the imagination, it is therefore exercises that action on the passive subject whose faculty it is, about which we rightly say that the inner sense is thereby affected. Apperception and its synthetic unity is so far from being the same as inner sense that the former, rather, as the source of all combination, applies prior to all objects of all sensible intuition of objects in general, and to the manifold of intuitions in general, under the name of the categories. Inner sense, on the contrary, contains the mere form of intuition, but without the combination of the manifold in it, and thus does not contain any determinate intuition at all, which is possible through the consciousness of the determination of the manifold, through the transcendental action of the imagination, synthetic influence of the understanding of the inner sense, which I have named the figurative synthesis. I went through that really fast because, yes, it is just the distinction between time and apperception. Why did he think we would get that confused?
I don't know, but I'm confused by
But I don't know what he said in the middle there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so takes it up into itself in order, as it were, to combine the manifold of its own intuition. So understanding now has a manifold of intuition, which is self-contradictory because he's defined the understanding as the faculty for
Spontaneous
having,
concept.
yeah, and he's defined intuition as what's given to us. So that just seems like a contradiction. Thus, its synthesis.
No,
What is
unless
it?
he's saying it's the intuition that like maps onto the
He's saying
concept.
sensibility can't. He's saying that understanding can't do this. He says Well, I mean, I'm going to stop him right at the beginning. Now, since in humans, the understanding is not itself a faculty of intuitions, you can cancel that out. The understanding is not a faculty of intuitions. It doesn't matter whether it's human or not, because what does he define the understanding as? The faculty of thought.
Yeah.
And what does he define an intuition as? He's defined an intuition as something which is passively given to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, by definition, not in us humans, by definition, the understanding is not a faculty of intuitions. Now, he seems to be thinking of some idea of an understanding which is capable of intuition. So let's try to humor that. Think of that.
Okay.
What exactly makes it an understanding?
Somehow spawning the intuition? I don't know. Spontaneously?
Right, but then it's not an intuition. I mean, he's talked about this earlier with like intellectual intuitions and like a being which could.
I'm just trying to humor the pretty like blatant contradiction and see if there's anything to get out of it, but
I guess it's just
basically I think he's just trying to stress that sensibility can't do anything like
I think what he's trying to do with
he's trying
this
to stress the importance of
start,
the
right,
understanding.
in us humans, the understanding, right? I think again, this is probably contrasted to Kant's implicit idea of God, right, as something which has a non-discursive understanding, and which thinks its intuitions into existence, i.e., its pure activity
Yeah.
generates for itself the objects on which it would need to work.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that that would not be understanding by the definition he's established. So it seems like he wouldn't be using the words consistently, if that's what he's
Which
talking
is not
about.
surprising for Kant, so
Which is not
I'm
surprising
gonna
for
grant that as the winner.
I think it's the most likely hypothesis
Yeah.
for now.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean, I was just wrong like a second ago.
Yeah.
So, even if these were given insensibility, cannot take them up into itself. Okay, in order, as it were, to combine the manifold of its own intuition.
Right. Sensibility can never combine itself, basically. That's always the responsibility of the understanding. Or understanding is the only one that can do that.
But he's saying, but look, I'm going to cut out some clauses to make it make more grammatical sense, okay?
Okay.
The understanding
Mm-hmm.
is not itself a faculty of intuitions.
Yep.
Even if these were given insensibility, cannot take them up into itself. So, in other words, what cannot take them up into itself? The understanding.
No,
No, that's not how grammar works, man. The understanding, so even if these were given insensibility, really there should be a comma there. No, there shouldn't. And even if these were given insensibility, right? So in other words, let's take out the and, right?
Even if these were given,
the understanding
is not a faculty.
Okay. So you're saying that a clause is sensibility cannot take them up into itself. But look, and even if these were given in sensibility, cannot take them up into itself. So the subject is the understanding.
Right, and I was saying sensibility cannot take it up into...
No, but if the subject of the predicate is cannot take them up into itself, right? The predicate is cannot take them up into itself. The subject is the understanding. Therefore, the understanding is what cannot take them up into itself.
Oh, okay. I see now.
Yeah.
Even if the understanding were given insensibility, cannot take it up into itself.
No, the intuitions. It's saying that even if the intuitions are given insensibility, which they are,
Mhm.
right? They can't take those intuitions up into itself. But
No,
I
but
don't
you
know
just
what
said
that means.
the understanding, but now you're saying it's the intuitions.
No, I'm saying the understanding
Mhm.
can't take the intuitions from sensibility up into itself.
But then wouldn't it be this instead of these?
These is the intuitions.
Yeah, so even if these were given in sensibility like they are, they cannot be taken
Right.
up into themselves. That's what I've been trying to.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say the
Okay.
whole time.
So what I'm saying, regardless, is the understanding cannot take intuitions up into itself.
No, it can because the intuitions can't, but the understanding can.
No, the understanding is the subject, and the predicate is cannot take them up into itself. And them is intuitions.
Oh, okay. All right, no, I see now. All right. Sorry, I had to read that like 10 times. I can see now.
Okay. So moving forward, right? So the understanding
Mm.
can't take intuitions up into itself. Okay. In order, I don't know what that means. In order to, as it were, combine the manifold of its own intuition, it's not its own intuition because it came from sensibility. Okay, whatever. Thus, its synthesis, considered in itself alone, is nothing other than the unity of the action of which it is conscious as such, even without sensibility. So, in other words, the synthesis is nothing other than the unity of the action of which it is conscious, even without sensibility. So that seems to be apperception,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the action of which it is conscious as such, even without sensibility, is apperception. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why wouldn't he just say apperception?
I don't know, because he's Kant.
Anyway, moving forward. But through which it is capable of itself determining sensibility internally with regard to the manifold that may be given in it in accordance with its form of intuition. It's just repetition. Okay. Under the designation of transcendental synthesis of imagination, it therefore exercises that action on the passive subject. Whose faculty it is, about which we might rightly say that the inner sense is thereby affected. It's unnecessary. This whole thing is unnecessary. He's simply reiterating what he's already said. Basically, that the sensibility is passive and the intuition is active. Or the understanding is active and the sensibility is passive. That's all he's saying.
Oh, okay.
So again, he's solving this non-problem with a mess of
Confusion about,
clauses that
yeah.
doesn't do anything at all. Okay.
Bruh.
You ready for the next paragraph, Matt? It's your
Yeah,
turn.
I just had to hit the bruh button. I forgot. I don't think I'm sharing my whole screen with you, but I had to hit the bruh button real quick.
Bruh.
Yeah. Sorry that wasn't.
Uh,
Yeah. God.
nonsense.
We're even. How
Nonsense.
much
All right.
longer is this? Oh, geez, we still have like a whole like half page after this.
Okay.
Oh God, this is definitely the only section I'm doing tonight. What the fuck?
Guys, I'm so excited to get into the transcendental logic, he said.
I really didn't know it was like this. I didn't read this much of
I
it.
did.
Ugh.
I mean, it's better than it was the first
I was
time
gonna say,
around.
to be fair, we've gotten some pretty cool insights in like previously.
But this
No, this shit
this was
is
just
terrible. This is
ridiculous.
awful. This is awful.
This is terrible.
This
To
is making me
clarify,
understand why
one of
people.
the easiest parts of Kant, he created this incomprehensible mess to clarify like the easiest thing.
Because of a fucking. He assumes there's a
That somehow we
confusion.
would confuse like our awareness of being one experience with time.
Must have struck everyone. Fuck you. Now I have to go through all this.
It's not a paradox at all. There's no
Uh,
paradox here. You're using a vaguely similar word, but distinguishing very clearly the distinction between those two things.
And he's repeated the distinction throughout the aesthetic and the logic. Like,
But it's a paradox that must have occurred to everyone.
must have occurred to
Profound
everyone.
paradox. Everyone must have been so confused by
Oh my
this.
god, bro.
Unlike this
Hell
paragraph that I'm about to write, that'll clear everything up. Maybe if I add more clauses. Clarity is when you write
Clause
clauses.
maxing. He's clause maxing.
Clarity is when you write clauses, and the more clauses you write, the clearer it is.
Definitely doesn't clutter the page and makes it hard to.
I think someone just like, you know that meme that's like, we purposely trained him bad as a joke.
Yeah.
That's Kant in writing.
Yeah. Oh.
Like he literally just does the opposite of what a good writer
God,
does.
dude, who is the editor or editors that like published the Critique of Pure Reason?
Absurd.
Also,
Ridiculous.
keep in mind this is the second edition, so like someone looked at this again in the context of the first
Well, I
edition
think
and was
what
like,
happened is
"Yep."
people are like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he went, they must have confused time for apperception.
Ah!
Well, maybe someone did. Maybe someone was just like dumb in that particular way, and he was like,
Someone wrote him a
"This is the
letter,
person-
yeah, and
yeah, this is the person I need to clarify it to."
shout out to you, confused reader.
Shout out to the reader who confused apperception with the inner sense.
I will now write like 2 or 3 fucking paragraphs to.
I'm sure that you must have spent less time thinking about it than we spent reading this paragraph to clarify it. If
Dear
you're
God,
confused
that
about
took
the
like
difference
30
between
minutes, didn't it? Like,
apperception and inner
probably
sense.
close 20.
Oh
30
my
minutes.
god. All right. Anyway, let's continue. Let's just go.
We also always perceive this in ourselves. We cannot think of a line without drawing it in thought. Yep. We cannot think of a circle without describing it. Okay. We cannot represent the 3 dimensions of space at all without placing 3 lines perpendicular to each other at the same point. And we cannot even represent time without, in drawing a straight line, which is to be the external figurative representation of time, attending merely to the action of the synthesis of the manifold, through which we successively determine the inner sense, and thereby attending to the succession of this determination in inner sense. Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's wrong. Sorry, no. We can think of a circle without describing it in the sense he's imagining. We can represent the 3 dimensions without placing them in 3 lines perpendicular to itself. This is the trap Hegel calls picture thinking.
Yeah,
Right. So,
was,
like, I can think pi r squared about a circle without describing it. I don't need to draw out the circle to know that pi equals r squared. I could have never had the idea of a circle, and as a pure relation of ideas, I think I could be informed that pi r squared and think about it.
Yeah, and
And in
also
any
we don't
sense-
have a fucking like we don't have like an XYZ map when like thinking about
Yeah.
like anything in like our experience basically. Or,
And
most
further
things.
than that, I can make calculations about tesseracts.
Yeah.
So this is wrong. This is just picture thinking. So
All right.
I mean, that comes down to that's the crux of the critique of pure reason, isn't it? That it's picture thinking.
Cringe. Okay.
All right.
Motion as action of the subject, not as determination of an object. Should I read this now or like?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Motion of an object in space does not belong in a pure science, thus also not in geometry. For that something is movable cannot be cognized a priori, but only through experience. But motion, as description of a space, is a pure act of the successive synthesis of the manifold in outer intuition, in general through productive imagination, and belongs not only to geometry, but even to transcendental philosophy.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense to me. Did you understand it?
I understood the first part, but motion
So
as
it's
description
saying
of space.
it's saying so right. Description is basically imagination. So motion of an object in space, meaning I think any particular law of motion does not belong to pure science
Right.
or geometry,
Yeah, I
but
understood that
motion
part.
as a description, meaning as a pure act of the successive synthesis of the manifold of outer intuition in general through productive imagination. So in other words, the ability to imagine motion.
Oh, that's what description means?
Yes. So
Oh,
yes, he
okay.
has yes. So he has we have the
Oh,
capacity
oh,
for
oh, as like
imagining.
so basically like what
Yes.
the laws of the
Well,
ability to
in essence, it's just the imagination of motion as possible. That
right.
representation belongs to us.
Okay. Yep, makes sense to me. Okay, I agree. All right.
I don't even think that what he's saying exactly says what I think he thinks he's saying. Like, I don't. I just got what he was trying to say. I don't think he actually said it.
Well, that's just because he used description weirdly, I think.
Anyway, let's continue.
Okay.
So, motion as an action of the subject, not as a determination of the object.
Consequently, the synthesis of the manifold in space, if we abstract from this manifold in space and attend solely to the action in accordance with which we determine the form of inner sense, first produces the concept of succession at all. The understanding, therefore, does not find some sort of combination of the manifold already in inner sense, but produces it by affecting inner sense. But how the I that I think is to differ from the I that intuits itself, for I can represent other kinds of intuition as at least possible, and yet be identical with the latter as the same subject. How therefore I can say that I as intelligence and thinking subject cognize myself as an object that is thought, insofar as I am also given to myself an intuition, only, like other phenomena, not as I am for the understanding, but rather as I appear to myself. This is no more and no less difficult than how I can be an object for myself in general, and indeed one of intuition and inner perceptions. But that it really must be so can be clearly shown, if one lets space count as a mere pure form of the appearances of outer sense, from the fact that time, although it is not an object of outer intuition at all, cannot be made representable to us except under the image of a line. So this is also wrong, I think, right? Because that's more picture thinking. Insofar as we
Yep.
draw it, without which sort of presentation we could not know the unity of its measure at all, or
That's
likewise,
awesome.
yeah, this whole thing is jack
You
shit.
could use you could use a circle. You could use a clock.
Ugh. Or likewise from the fact that we must always derive the determination of the length of time or also of the positions in time for all inner perceptions from that which presents external things to us as alterable. Hence, we must order the determinations of inner sense as appearances in time in just the same way as we order those of outer senses in space. Hence, if we admit about the latter that we cognize objects by their means only insofar as we are externally affected, then we must also concede that through inner sense we intuit ourselves only as we are internally affected by ourselves, i.e., as far as inner intuition is concerned, we cognize our own subject only as appearance, but not in accordance with what it is in itself.
Um,
Um,
I guess this just strikes him as mysterious in a way that doesn't strike me or you. That's all. Like he just seems to be like, how are we an object for ourselves? It's so crazy, but we must be. And I'm sitting here like, why is that? How is that an issue? That's what it is to be self-conscious, right?
so
If you rec-
is he basic? I'm confused about. Is he using like Is he using
he's
like is he
saying,
using time as like an analogy to like say what he's saying about the self, as like as like inner sense being outer and then like also being inner at the same time?
I think he's saying that we have to accept that time is an aspect of sensibility if we accept that space is, because Can you stop zooming in and out
Oh,
rapidly?
sorry, I'm reading my own. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, so he's basically just saying like space and time, so the inner and outer are connected. Oh, and he's basically
Yeah,
just
but I
saying
don't
that
see
it's
why.
the case with the self. What?
Yes, but I don't see why.
Well,
I don't know what the argument is.
the
Like
argument
I
is a
understand
bad
that he's
argument. We said it's wrong, but his argument is that it's because it has to be
represented through the imagination, I guess.
yes, yeah, which is
Okay.
which we said
Wrong.
is wrong, right? But that's his argument, I think.
Right.
And he's basically saying, I think, right, we have to do that with ourselves as well. We have to um, cognize the inner self as a. Oh yeah, so basically what you said is that he thinks it's this mysterious process that really is just quite clear. Okay, I just wanted to read it
Yeah.
through again. Okay, and then there's
Yeah.
a footnote. I do
You
not
already.
see.
Oh.
Huh?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I do not see how one can. Yeah. Sorry, I do not see how one can find so many difficulties in the fact that inner sense is affected by ourselves. Every act of
Are
a,
you kidding me right now?
I was gonna say, didn't he just have
Are
a
you
difficult?
kidding me right now? It must have appeared to
Bruh.
everyone. Didn't appear to me though. It doesn't seem weird to me.
Uh, you
Bruh.
can't hear the bras I'm playing
Bruh.
right now.
Are you kidding me right now?
Ugh.
I also don't see how one can find so many difficulties in the fact that inner sense is affected by ourselves. Funny you should mention that. It's funny how it must have occurred to everyone, but it didn't occur to you, and it didn't occur to either of us. Or are you kidding me right now?
I love the B edition of Critique of Pure Reason. Um,
All
every
right.
every act of attention can give us an example of this. In such acts,
Yeah,
yeah,
it really can. Can't it?
in such acts, the understanding always determines the inner sense in accordance with the combination that it thinks, to the inner intuition that corresponds to the manifold in the synthesis of the understanding. How much the mind is commonly affected by this means, everyone will be able to perceive in himself.
Yeah, we really will, Kant. Immanuel Kant getting mad about scenarios he made up himself.
Yeah.
All right.
Uh,
Well,
oh yeah, that's the end of the section. Thank God.
honestly, you should put a timestamp for viewers to tell them what to skip. This is a load of nonsense.
Eh. I mean, I don't know. This is pretty comprehensive. I don't want to skip, even if there's shit.
Well, but you can. I don't. A timestamp, not cut it out, but
Oh,
like tell
oh,
them.
oh, oh, yeah.
By the way, at this point, we get into a paragraph of Kant that is so stupid that you
Well,
might
I
as
feel
well
like that was
just.
this whole fucking section. Like, this whole section was just
It's right where.
brimming with bullshit.
No, we now understand what the imagination is. It was incomprehensible, but before those three dots,
Oh,
it did add something. We now
yeah.
understand what the imagination
That's
is.
true. Yeah.
So it's definitely not bullshit,
I got so caught
right?
up in the post. I got
But
so caught
after
up in.
those three dots,
Yeah.
the whole section is bullshit.
So this, yeah. And this is
If
worded bullshit, but actually adds stuff.
yes, this is worded bullshit, but it helped us understand what the hell's going on. But
Mm.
this, he just like invented a problem. Said, "I know this problem is super mysterious,
Oh, yeah.
but it just is like that." And then he says, "By the way, how is anyone confused by this?"
Yeah.
At the end, and the whole time we weren't confused by it. What the hell,
Oh,
dude?
God. Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's end Kant for now.
That's enough Kant for Ever.
Forever. Didn't even get to section 25 of Critique of Pure Reason. Rip. Um, yeah, well, let's see a preview for next time, since section 25 is entitled in the
Should have attended to your faculties.
Yeah, oh, I should have, yeah, because then I wouldn't actually have gotten caught up in this, well, I didn't
I
actually
don't
get caught
know.
up.
That wouldn't do anything, honestly. There's nothing that could have been done to avoid this.
Yeah, because we're just reading it sequentially, and this is sequentially what came. A made-up problem and then a dismissal of the made-up problem after an analysis of the made-up problem. Dear
Makes up a
God.
problem, says this problem must have occurred to everyone, launches into a bullshit analysis of the problem that contradicts itself, makes no sense, and has innumerable clauses. Then, at a footnote at the end, it says, by the way, how are you seeing this as a problem? It's ridiculous. This isn't a problem.
Every act of attention can give us examples of this. Duh.
What's the big deal?
Oh, God.
I mean, he's literally gaslighting us.
Yeah, if this were... Yeah, oh, God. We just got gaslit by a fucking 1787 work. That... Yeah, like, if this is the case, you should have removed this whole three-dotted, I was like, I wonder what this is, and, this... So from now on, if this shows up, I'm gonna prepare myself if this ever shows up again. Which it might, does it?
It's shown up before.
Oh, it shows up here too. So we'll see what happens at 160.
Yeah, sometimes it makes sense, but like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kantian lesson of the day.
Sometimes
you can imagine.
Kant is stupid and doesn't make any sense, but
Yeah.
actually, yeah, there is important content. Imagination is what you thought it was when you first heard the word, apparently.
Yeah, and that it's transcendental.
Yeah.
The synthesis of the imagination is
Yeah.
in fact transcendental. So
Yeah.
take that lesson home with you, kids, as you imagine things. Maybe you want to imagine like a line for some reason to represent time, even though nobody fucking does that. I don't know.
I mean, timeline.
Huh?
Timelines.
Yeah, but like, as I guess I meant in like a necessary sense. Like
Yeah.
Kant is arguing, you don't need to do that.
Cannot. We cannot. I guess that's the royal we. Huh, Kant?
Yeah. Ay, Kant.
Can't imagine time without... Can't imagine pure space without anything in it. Can't imagine time without using a line.
Yeah. No, that literal what you just said, like word for word verbatim, was playing through my head while I was reading that. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, how do you... I was like, no way you can imagine pure space all the way back in the transcendental aesthetic, and then you can't imagine time without a fucking line. Fuck you, dude. You liar. And then this is in the middle of you gaslighting me. Like every layer of this this three-dotted bullshit is fucked on like 2 levels or more.
Bro, just attend to your faculties and you'll find you can imagine space without anything at all, but you can't imagine time without a line. Should have attended to your faculties harder, bro.
Yeah, faculty attention issue. All right, well. Thanks for joining us. God, this was painful. Kind of funny. Glad we got through it. Looking forward to moving forward. Although
I mean,
I'm
this
a
is
little
why you
concerned
want
now.
to study Kant with friends, because if you did it on your own,
This will probably just cause
it wouldn't
anger.
be funny at all. It wouldn't be funny at
No,
all.
you would just get
be confusing,
frustrated.
which is what happens when you
So-
study Kant alone,
So
unfortunately.
thanks for joining us on YouTube. And let me know in the comments if you're still watching this far into this hour and almost 14-minute long recording. If you'd like to join Kant study, I will add you to this Discord that we're in, and we will have a good time reading Kant. So
Yeah.
alrighty.
We promise. We promise it's fun.
Yeah, we laughed.
In spite of what just happened.
And we used sound bites.
Bruh.
So
without this, yeah, without, yep.
So
Yep.
thank you for
It's
joining
the only
us.
fun way to get through Kant.
Yeah, and we did it today. So thank you for joining us as we did, and we'll see you next time for section 25. Sayonara.
And